Hello, everyone. Today I was going to go over some of the aspects of my latest track, which is called Rainfall. I put it up on YouTube a couple days ago. And what I thought I would do with this is kind of go over some of the more specific kind of sound production type things that I did with like the drums. So you can hear a little bit of you can hear what the drums would have sounded like if they didn't go through the filtering on the Spectralis, and kind of just help you understand how they sounded, and maybe some other aspects of the track. So just to give you an orientation of what you're looking at, I've got my Spectralis here. It actually this one looks like a Spectralis, but is actually internally a Spectralis 2. And obviously I've got the Access Virus TI here, the Polar. I always wanted one of these, which was like the blue kind of faceplate. I think it looks cooler than the Spectralis 2. And however, I actually prefer the Spectralis 2 in how it functions, because it's a lot easier to kind of like highlight all of the things. These kind of like buttons raise up, but it looks really neat. So anyway, I have both editions because I like it that much. It's a real shame because the Spectralis I bought from Reverb, I think last year, I think the guy was from like the Netherlands or something, and there was tape on these two like smart media holders here. And I was like, oh, could you remove that? I just wanted to make sure it wasn't going to rip off the paint. And sure enough, they removed it, but it looks like they used like an X-Acto knife and just damaged the front plate. So that's kind of depressing because it wouldn't have had that problem otherwise. So anyway, here's the song. So you can kind of hear like the pattern and how it sounds. I'm actually on pattern 4, so there's like I think 8 patterns I have on this, and I'll just play it for you. And this is actually my second making of this video, because I had forgotten some of the parts to this that I had done, and so I was trying to mute something that I couldn't mute because I didn't exactly know how I had recorded it. So the Spectralis is kind of an interesting device because you can sequence things in a number of ways. Now, there's the internal monophonic synth engine, which actually has multiple parts because you can sequence one oscillator going through one filter, 2 other oscillators going through a different filter, and you can kind of mix and match that way. And you can record it either by playing the notes. So here, one thing I kind of dislike about the Virus, after like Series B, they decided to make it so every time you turn it on, you have to turn local off if you don't want it to play from the actual, like the internal synth engine. And this is how I have it always set up. Now the B series actually let you turn it off and it would stay off. They must have thought people couldn't figure out like what was wrong with their synth if it wasn't playing the notes. But here, let's see. Well, it's highlighted, so I don't know why. Okay, so it's oh, I know why. It's because the 3 parts that you have for this internal monosynth, it's highlighting the one that is actually editing or modulating the drums, and since nothing's playing, you don't hear anything. So I'd have to actually hold this and get to this other part. Yeah, and so you can hear actually one of the parts. You can maybe hear that part in there, and I can kind of just solo it, so you'll hear. The soloing doesn't work here because the way that the Virus is sequenced, when you mute it, you're just muting the volume and not the notes. So it's still actually sending the notes. So I have to change that to a trigger. And so now all you'll hear is the monosynth. And so I can turn that off right now because it's going through the this multi-mode filter. But it has like a pretty gnarly sound. Whoops, sorry. So I'll close that and turn it off. And actually what you might be able to hear it. You're actually hearing the other oscillator modulating the filter. So I believe it is set right now to, I think it's exponential filter FM. So one of the oscillators is modulating the filter that the drums are going through. Now you can't really hear that when the drums are going. I'll show you. Oops. That wasn't what I meant to do. That was soloing that part, I think. No, that was selecting it. So I wanted to also solo both parts. So you know, you couldn't hear the actual synth kind of making that modulation. So let me show you I'll sort of reverse what I had going, and I'll take the drums out of that analog filter. Because it's actually going through the analog filter, the low pass filter, and the filter bank. And what I'll do is I'll take it and pull all the drums out of that and put them as just like the samples that they would have been. So I can I'll mute the analog synth part. So now you shouldn't hear anything. And I'll go to volume and I'll go to drums. And now I'll just turn the volume up. Honestly, I actually think that sounds pretty good too. And maybe I should have kept it that way because I like that. But I don't know how that would have changed like the sound. So let's solo the drums with the synth part. Oh, I guess you can't solo two parts? No. So, no, yes, you can. I'm on select. I keep doing that. So now they're both playing. Now you'll hear that. It's a little boring, I guess, to me, but I mean, it sounds crisper because it's not going through those filters. If I were to have the monosynth engine going as well, right now the drums are actually still going through that filter. So it's just like now going through two different parts. I would have to turn that off, which is pretty easy. I can turn off the analog send. And that hybrid synth engine is also going through the fixed filter bank. I believe that the low pass filter is also going through that filter bank. So both parts are going through this filter bank. And I'll show you just, so I'll go back to the drums and just show you kind of all these weird manipulation things you can do with this filter bank. So I will go back to the solo and just have the drums and that synth part, and then I'll have to close the other filter that one of the sounds is going through that you can hear. All right, so I have to make sure that the drums are now going back through the analog filters. So actually, I can show you just how that sounds, how different it sounds. And since it's going through this filter bank, if I push this filter bank button, you can kind of have each individual frequency band opened and closed. So I'm closing the low pass, and I can open it, So if you can kind of just close all of them and change the sound a lot. So you're still hearing something, even though they're all closed. And I think that's because they're going... Oh, I had the low pass not closed all the way. So now it's closed. So I could open any individual band here. So this is like 1200 kilohertz. Or just the high pass. Now, it's even modified because the drums aren't going straight into these. The drums are going into the low pass filter. So the drums go into the low pass filter and then go into this filter bank. So if I can still manipulate the cutoff and resonance of that low pass filter to really affect the sound too. So instead of having it go through the low pass filter, we could just directly send it to the filter bank. So now you're just hearing the drums going through that filter bank. And so if I go back into the filter bank, I can kind of just change which frequencies it's going to go through. And you can get some pretty wild results with that. Just depending on how you set up the filter bank. And you can actually pan individual I'll turn that down a little bit. You can pan individual frequencies. So I'll show you what that sounds like. It gets almost like nauseating if you do it too strongly. But you could actually sequence. You could sequence when these different frequencies open and close. And I think it's kind of mind-boggling what you can do with that. So if we close everything, whoops, that's not closing them. That was panning them. So I'm gonna kind of get them back to center, at least close enough. Okay, and then we go back to the levels, and I'm going to turn them all down. Well, one thing, if you go into, so you can actually change like the what is it? The Q, forget the name of that, but it's the filter bank, like Q, the resonance kind of. I think it's kind of how much resonance gets cut off at the. Oh, I'm just blabbering. I can't remember what the Q is. So anyway, you can change that too, and that'll change the sound of it. It might just be frequency or the resonance. So I turned it all the way down now, so it gets a more clean sound. And I don't know what FS stands for. I don't think there's no help section for this. So anyway, I'll turn it back to what it was at. And now I'm going to turn the levels down for all of the filter bank frequencies, and show you just like how you could then sequence all of them. So I go into the sequencer edit, and I'll go down to it just has like a default on what is on each. Oops, I don't know if you heard that, but my Creative Cloud has an update available. So you can, the first 10 sequencer lines on the Spectralis are set up to sequence the filter bank opening and closing. So if I go to like L5, which is the 800 hertz, and I change the length to 1, you can hear when I just sequenced a few of those. I could go to sequencer line 2 and change the length of those to like 2 steps. And then the low pass. And so you can kind of tell, like you can make a rhythm out of the filter bank frequencies being opened up at certain times. So maybe you could do the snare coming out at the step 5 and 13. Well, apparently that didn't do anything. Maybe that's too high of a frequency. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Not quite sure why that didn't. Yeah, I would have thought for sure. Would have thought for sure the no, I guess this is the 1200 hertz. So you can kind of hear that. So anyway, you could do that, and then you can actually change how they're being sequenced. This is just front, back, like the first to the end. It's just kind of like forward. And so you can change that too if you held the function button to random. So you'll see that now it's kind of randomly going. Not sure if that's showing up on the video, but you know, you could do that on any of these sequencer lines. So you hit function and hit random, and now they'll kind of randomly be sequenced. So I think that's a pretty neat feature. Anyway, so that's kind of how those drums sound. So I'll just go back and play this pattern again. It won't save it unless I tell it to. And so now you'll hear, well, I guess, you know, it wouldn't sound that good if you just played what I have now and added some extra stuff to that. So we could go here and since this I don't know if it's a bass line or what kind of sound that is coming out of this other filter, it is also going through those filter banks. So it's being sequenced in a similar fashion to the drums. So if we go back into the filter bank and we can change that Q. And now we changed like the whole feel of this. And then you could also start bringing the delays through the filter bank. So now the filter bank is actually going through the delays. And it's at a weird time. I mean, you could get some totally wild sounding pattern going that sounds nothing like what it originally sounded like. And I suppose you could even bring the drums back through the original sound. So you'll have both the drums kind of being sequenced. I think I was mentioning earlier, they're actually being frequency modulated by one of the oscillators, and that's going on this step. So if I get the drums not going through the bypassing the filter, I don't know if it's really audible now because of all the stuff I have going on. So I'll load this pattern again. Since I didn't save anything, I'd have to mute, go back to the motif and change it to trigger, and now the virus will stop playing. So that's kind of what I've got going on there. So right, I was going to kind of see if we could show you what this sequencer line is doing to like modulate the filter FM, and I'm not even sure it was doing a great job of it. So one thing I could do is change the tuning of that oscillator that was modulating it to see if we can really change how it sounds. You can kind of hear it here. I mean, that kind of sounds crazy. And I wonder if I could make it more pronounced. Yeah, so it's only doing it at 150. I think it goes up to 255, so we can really start. I mean, it's kind of cool. And it's randomly sequencing it, so it's kind of, whoop, gosh, I keep doing that. It's randomly sequencing it. You could do forward to just forward. But I like random. And most of the steps are one in length, so they'd be a 16th note in length. I think maybe, yeah. Well, you could change the probability on them too. So I could change the probability to 63%, 13%, 25%. And then you could change the waveform. So right now it's kind of more like a saw than a sine. Now it's a sine wave. If I add some resonance to the low pass filter, again, it's going through that fixed filter bank, but now I can change the wave shape to be a square. And let's see. I mean, it sounds just nuts, I think. You can even change, you could add sync to it. I don't know if that'd do anything. And then change the coarse tuning. So it's synced to oscillator 2, I believe. Yep. You can also change the keyboard pitch scaling, so everything's kind of scaled to a keyboard. You could change that to negative, so the higher you go, the lower the pitch or the frequency. I mean, it sounds so crazy now you wouldn't really be able to hear what that kind of does. But just kind of like showing you just kind of how crazy the Spectralis is and why I love it so much, you know. To me, you can just get this, like, I mean, I don't know what that would sound like if I unmuted the other parts and opened up this, the other oscillators to go through this other filter. Oh, something must be muted. Oh no, I guess it's, yeah, the drums are just so weird. Well, clearly it doesn't sound very good. And then, you know, so we got all these different parts, or these different patterns. So, you know, I break it up into individual patterns that I build up. So the first one, it just kind of sounds like this. Second one starts cutting into it. Third one brings in the hi-hat, which I like, adds a nice element. And then I think the next pattern brings in that, somebody called it like a robot tone for, like, I don't really remember, but had kind of like a robot acid line. And then I was particularly fond of the piano part that came in. That's here on this pattern 6. It just adds like a moody element that I really like to a lot of my music. And, you know, Radical Technologies had this piano sample in there, and I've used it since I bought the thing in like 2011 or 12. I just like it. I just think it sounds good. It fits my needs, even though I always try and find other piano sounds I like. The one on the Spectralis is just perfect. You can kind of hear what that sounds like by itself too, although you'll still hear the virus, so I can mute the virus. Although I have to, again, turn off that, this is the wrong part. So now you won't hear the virus, it'll kind of fade out. well, that was kind of a lot of fun making that. Sort of, I guess you kind of heard me in real time how I would come up with like a pad part with my track. That was kind of unplanned, but it sort of started to sound really interesting with the drums, the way they came out. So I decided to just go with it. And I expect nobody to have made it this far listening anyway. So it'll just be for me someday listening back, I imagine. And my cat, who says hello to all of you. Her name is Luna. And she's stuck in the other room while we figure out why she's having gross poops. So yeah, hopefully, you found that interesting. Yes. If you have any other questions, if you want me to go over something different next time, I'm happy to do that. I suppose I could make another video related to this setup if you're interested. I don't really know what else there is to tell you, but I'm happy to go through things again. So thanks very much for listening. Take care.